serious dark web users of Reddit, was there ever a point in your use that you felt you were genuinely in danger? What happened? Not the modern dark web, but back in the days of Usenet I posted some harsh criticism in alt.religion. Scientology. Yes, that was a typo for Scientology, but I'm leaving it for context of a bunch of posts. The online threats were funny, but when I started getting death threats by mail I backed the fuck off. Edit. I didn't think this would blow up like it did, but to answer a few common questions, I posted a bunch of criticism of the COS in the Usenet group alt.religion. Scientology. This was in the late 90s, and well before most modern forums and content aggregators like Reddit existed. FARC was the big one and IG was just starting to get popular. I was high school. For non-Americans, grades 9 to 12 I was in high school, and was using my home computer as an FTP server for a Whereas group on Ike because I convinced my dad to sign up for a 90-day free trial of this new thing called broadband. I had 3 megabits per second down and 1.5 megabits per second up. Of course we never cancelled it. They figured out who I was by using a cute FTP vulnerability to get root directory access to my PC. The death threats were bad enough, but what really sticks with me is the malice of deleting my family photos, including the last picture as us with my dad while he was alive. I was the typical invincible feeling young adult, and I was more concerned about worrying my mom than I was about my own safety. This was long before doxing was a thing, and online threats going from email to handwritten letters was terrifying. But as a high school kid I never would have admitted it. Nobody asked, but if I was confronted in person I would have fought back 18 years later. If they really held a grudge and threatened me again with the same malice expressed in those letters I got, I would open the door with a gun in hand, and if they tried to get in, I would assume that they were intending to kill me and shoot first. This is a serious post, so as funny as it would be to accept the previous statement with the autocomplete error sheet first, I fixed it. I've written a couple of books about the dark web, which means I've spent a bit of pretty much every day of the past 8 years poking around inside. Over the years I spoke to, interviewed, and even visited many dark web identities, drug dealers and operators of darknet markets mostly. I attended the trial of one of the most evil people on the planet, Lux, the owner of Hurt to the Core, a child torture site. Turned out to be a friendless unhappy kid who built his evil empire from his childhood bedroom, with his parents blissfully unaware of what was happening under their noses. The only time I felt even slightly in danger despite all this nosing around in there was when I helped uncover a Hidman scam. The owner of Bisa Mafia, the most profitable murder for hire site in history, came after me when I started writing about him. He made loads of threats. You don't know who I am, but I know who you are and where you live. But that wasn't scary, as I had access to the backdoor of his site thanks to a friendly hacker and knew he didn't really want to hurt anybody. It took a bit of a darker turn when he told the people who had signed up to work as hitmen on his site and who he made video themselves burning cars with signs on them to advertise how legit his site was, then never sent them the promised money for doing so, that I was the owner of the site who had ripped them off. That could have become ugly, but luckily even the thugs weren't dumb enough to believe him. The only other time I've been a bit nervous was when Homeland Security wanted to have a friendly meeting with me on one of my trips to the US to attend a trial. They were friendly, but scary too. The books about all the above and other dark web stuff are here. Edit. I'm trying to respond to everyone, but I can't keep up. If I haven't answered your question, please don't take it personally. I probably missed it. Edit again, and I'm definitely not going into any private chats. Sorry to all of you who are trying seriously. Stop redoing an AMA. Thanks so much for suggesting an AMA, but this exact same thing happened a couple of years ago. I responded to an AskReddit thread. It blew up. Everyone said you should do an AMA, and then nobody came. You can find them by going through my history anyway. I was a casual orderer of the dark web for a while, and got pretty big into it, and started buying slightly bulky packages of drugs. If you knew the markets for a while then you would know one called Alpha Bay was the best of the best. The Amazon of drugs and fraud would be its best description. However, it went down mysteriously one day and everyone assumed the owners just scammed everyone for their Bitcoin. Partially true, but in the background it was actually seize the D. Everyone flocked to a new site called Hansa which had some sketchy design features, but it was the next best alternative. Turns out the Dutch police took over the site, and with cooperation of multiple governments ran a drug distribution onion site with over $1 million of transactions for around a month. They were gathering information from unsuspecting users, including me, who bought with faulty security practices. Now this is where I started freaking out. Imagine trafficking drugs through the mail and the Attorney General at the time, Jeff Sessions, makes a speech live on television that he was going to crack down and explicitly explains how faked everyone on Hansa was because they have been gathering data for over a month. And in a big dick energy move closes the site and puts up a banner in its place saying everyone who has purchased will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law during his live speech. I was shitting myself for a month as many arrests did occur, but luckily I guess I wasn't important enough and nothing happened to me. I own a fairly rare car that had a rare code. I looked it up on Google and there was only one other person on the car makers forum that had the same error. And this guy took months and months going back and forth between car shops and the forum thread to try to get the issue fixed. Everyone on the forum was pitching in to try to help him. So I kept going through this long forum thread to try to figure out if he ever fixed it. And suddenly there's no more replies from the guy. Everyone was scratching their heads for a while. We thought he had maybe gotten the issue fixed and didn't bother to update us on it. Then one day, a news article popped up about a really rich guy who died in a Thai jail cell. And then we connected the two stories and they matched up. The same make and model of the car in the news article matched up with his car. And they were both claiming to be in Thailand at the time. So what happened was that same guy who was still talking on the forums got raided by the Thai police around the same time he stopped replying to the forum. Turns out that he was running one of the biggest dark web marketplaces where drugs were being sold and exchanged. It had something like $1 million in revenue per day, and he was hiding out in Thailand while living in luxury. They found him dead in his jail cell a few days later. They claim he died of suicide. Religious Silk Road and CGMC user here. I used to get the stuff delivered to my dorm, but the package didn't come directly to my room. I had to go pick it up from my dorm's building office. For my third or fourth order from Silk Road, I got an email saying that a package had arrived for me, but when I went to pick it up I was told by a rep that my package was in the door's office. I got freaked out. I also for some reason was getting a lot of spam calls which just added to my anxiety. I was scared shitless. I didn't go to pick it up for like 4 days, meanwhile kept getting emails from the door's office to come to get my package. I didn't go because I thought that it was a setup. But after a couple of days, I said fuck it and went to pick up my package. I had paid a lot of BTC for that order and wanted to consume what I had ordered. When I got there, I realized that I was freaking out for no reason. The people holding on to my order couldn't have been nicer. They couldn't give me a reason why that package was delivered there and not to my dorm. So I just kept ordering more. lol. Edit. The package was always delivered by USPS Priority, which is run by the federal government, and I went to a state university. So technically the federal government transported funny stuff to the state government for meal mayo. So, I'm 56-year-old and have never stumbled into the dark web, thank God. I just spent more time than I should have reading about the ghastly videos that apparently thousands of you have seen, mostly by accident, and mostly when you were young children. Every single one of you noted how damaging the images and sounds were to you, and for many of you, that damage lingered. I'm especially saddened to read about those of you who were sweet innocents, just trying to have fun, who were ambushed by this unimaginable horror. Who knows how it changed you? I'm very grateful that the internet didn't exist when I was a child. Not that the videos described are any easier to process as an adult, but still. And I'm sitting here wondering how much of the anxiety disorders, depression, and lack of resilience and compassion that I see in our society is linked to what I'm reading here. It's really frightening to ponder, especially as this Reddit question, with over 7,000 comments, is only the tiniest tip of the iceberg. Those of you with young children, as a former college prof and a parent myself, here's my unsolicited advice. Know your children. Closely watch their emotional development and behavior. Create open, non-judgmental, safe relationships where they feel secure in the knowledge they can come talk to you about anything. Because in our world today, there's no real way to prevent them from seeing horrible images and video before they're able to process it. Be safe out there. I may have successfully purchased drugs on the darknet. I followed directions from Google on how to access it using Tor and how to encrypt Bitcoin addresses. The material arrived from outside the US. I was stoked, excited that I actually had completed it. Tested my drugs and all was great until I realized I did not use a VPN. I was cheating it for about a month. One night, I got my things ready to have personal sexy time. I connected my laptop to my big screen via me, left the laptop open facing me. I turned on my Bluetooth headphones and had some trouble connecting to the laptop. After tinkering with it, I got the sound working. I was in the middle of a diddle when the scene on screen froze. Although the picture stopped moving, I was still hearing sounds. I heard loud creaks like boots walking over wooden floorboards. The more I started paying attention to the sound, the more I began to hear clearer. I looked directly towards the laptop, and here I think he can hear us. He's looking at the camera. My heart dropped, and I flung towards the laptop to close it. I unplugged it all and tossed it aside. Nothing came of it to this day, but that faked with me for a while. About a year ago, I moved into a nice house that my grandpa had built himself. I was in the basement one day. The door was outside the house like one of those tornado movies. Anyway, there were some plastic containers on the shelves with holes cut into them. There were 4 or 5 of these open crates and there was hay inside, like there was supposed to be some kind of animal in there, but with no way of keeping it there, since the sides were cut out. I asked my grandpa about it, and he said the previous owners were very paranoid about everything, and almost never paid their rent. Behind one of the top shelf crates, there was a computer, like a full-blown $2,000 computer. I told my grandpa about the computer, and he said the owners skipped town, so he couldn't get their contact details to come get it. I took the computer upstairs and plugged it in just to see if it worked. It turned right on. No password. The only icon on the desktop was Tor. For those that don't know, Tor is a browser you can use to access the dark/deep web. The computer had a 40 MB hard drive. I took a brief look into the files in the video files. There was this massive list of videos, which isn't unusual, until I saw the name of each video. It instantly sent chills throughout my body. One was named Allison, another named Tiffany or something like that. I clicked on one of the videos hoping it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It was a 15-minute video of black screen and no audio. Towards that point I felt like I was being watched, although there wasn't a webcam. I don't think I'd ever wanna meet the previous owners. Edit. I remembered that the plastic crate's long sides were cut out, so maybe the previous owners slept in the crates, which is eerie in itself. Which would explain the hay. Just shows how paranoid the previous owners were. I heard about all the dark web stuff when I was about 12 over 13, so I decided to look around, thinking it wouldn't be that bad. There were a few odd moments, chat boxes popping up, but can't remember what they said to me. Found plenty of sites selling stolen tech for cheap, counterfeit money, Silk Road alternatives etc. I can't remember what the site was called, but I think it may have mentioned something about dead bodies. I've always had a strong sense of morbid curiosity, especially when I was young. So I clicked at first. Nothing was worse than things you might see on r/5050. But then there were odd things like photos that weren't already publicly available. It was mentioned in the title, description, or comments, but I can't remember which. Obviously quite unsettling that these may have been genuine murderers/serial killers. Anyway, I suddenly scrolled onto what I still refer to as the worst thing I have ever seen. It was a completely skinned human, but they still had their eyes and teeth. They were skinned down to their muscles and tied up. Immediately closed my browser. I was 13, and up until then had never felt such a sudden sense of sadness, panic, and fear. It's been 7 years and I can still vividly see the image in my head, although I try not think about it. I wasn't in danger per se, just felt scared as fuck. I was at a library browsing, because I've heard stories about the dark web and people finding out where you live, so I was already kind of scared going into it. I went there after school like 3 times a week and tried to find scary stuff. I didn't find anything interesting for the first month or so point. After a while, I found a pretty interesting site. It was sort of like Craigslist, but on the dark web. People were selling drugs and themselves. I just liked reading the ads. Some of them were pretty funny. Like I was trying to find scary stuff, but instead I found the nicest guy in the world asking if I wanted to buy heroin. The real scary stuff came after a guy sent me a private message. I don't know how, because I hadn't made a post on the site, so there was no way he could contact me, but I was a dumbass, so I didn't question it at the time. He asked me vague questions about my sexual preferences, and I was having a hard time answering, because I didn't speak/write/understand English as well as I do now. Also I was 13, so I probably wasn't able to answer them in my first language either. I don't remember how the conversation went exactly, but I guess he liked what I said, because he sent me a link, and, like a dumbass, I opened it. I will never forget what I saw. It looked kind of like Facebook on dark mode. The first post I saw there was of an unconscious naked woman who was bleeding a lot between her legs. The person who posted it also put a long caption on the pic, but I just remember the first line. She screamed like a beach. I scrolled further fast, trying not to look at the pics too closely, and realized it was a site where people posted pictures of women they've raped. I noped out of that site quickly. I closed the browser and the computer, picked up my stuff, and never went back to that library again. I was an avid dark web user. It wasn't scary considering I knew how to make sure to stay out of trouble and keep secure. But that's only me. You see, when I was browsing the dark web, very surface level, no clue how the next part happened, I was on a simple video player that lets me watch shows that have been taken off of, say, Netflix, or shows that aren't available in my country, and was asked by my parents to go get some groceries as they were cooking enchiladas. Here's where it went wrong. I turned off my monitor and made sure it was locked, and didn't turn off my PC fully. I put on shoes and went to my nearby grocery store, 5-ish minute walk, and got the necessary ingredients. When I came home, I went back to my room to find my little brother, 11 at the time, on my computer with the camera on and talking to some guy. He had multiple coverings over his face, some type of net-like fabric, and was talking via chat. I freaked out. I found out later he had apparently logged into my PC as he knew my password, because he played Minecraft often on my PC, and clicked on a pop-up that led him here, where he was talking to a guy. My older brother defense mode activated, and I got him out of the camera, turned it off, and immediately typed in chat, "We are alerting the authorities. Leave immediately." I saw him typing something. His shoulders were moving about as if he was typing on the keyboard, and proceeded to start to leave. As I clicked the confirmation button to leave, I can still remember that exact moment. On the right of the word confirm, to leave, I saw the chat box, and was only able to read one word before I left. Address. I immediately shut off my computer, and put multiple layers of black tape over my camera. I then turned to my brother, and asked why he was there, and who that guy was, but he started crying as I had raised my voice. My mind was still panicking, as I don't know how long he was on there, but eventually my parents came, and asked why he was crying. I explained the situation, including a brief explanation of what the dark web is, and I saw their faces going white. My stomach felt like it was going to come up any second, and I just sat there for a bit wondering what to do. Eventually I told my brother what actually happened, including how that man could have found out who we are, our names, our address, etc. Me and my parents called our local authorities, and they said they couldn't do much as that person was anonymous, and we have no video of it. Hindsight, I should have taken a photo of the guy before leaving. They sent a patrol car to our house, and asked what happened, etc. After the situation calmed a bit, we were able to convince the authorities to have a patrol car out of our house for the night. I threw out my PC after that, monitor and all, and still have some anxiety about going on the internet, hence the throwaway, and have even made sure that my family's privacy comes first and foremost. I remember not sleeping that night, and staying in my living room watching TV all night. It was probably the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced, and I still have anxiety over internet usage among other things. I genuinely felt in danger and have never touched the dark web again. I was buying bulk weed off the dark web. We called it internet weed cause the sheet was strong. Thing is, you never know what you get, so sometimes we'd get weed that was purple in color for the same price. The whole intent was to push it. We'd get it at like €6 a G and push it at €10. The purple, we labeled him purple kush/haze, and pushed it at almost double the rate, like €12 for people who knew their sheet and €14 for dumb white kids. Lol, hustlers out there know what I'm talking about. We'd normally hide it in our underwear for baggies, and when getting the bulk we'd put the brick in an Uber delivery bag and bring it from a different location that we ordered it to. We were 3 of us operating in a big tourist city, so we were stacking. After the outbreak I got back to my hometown, and after a month or so found that one of the guys got a court date. We were operating out of a small underground garage that we rented out from a guy who didn't really care about the contract or what we did in there, as long as we paid him. Apparently the cops showed up out of nowhere, calm as ice, and asked where the stash was at. After I heard this, I texted my guy who orders the weed securely. We paid him for the risk of ordering and keeping the pickup location secure, and he said that the site was down. The fact that they were able to pinpoint our location makes me feel like we were being monitored for a while. I kinda hope this gets buried. When I heard about the dark web I had to see it for myself. I had a vague history of Silk Road and started in Agora. Bitcoin was under $200 a coin. I became a dealer almost immediately after. Agora was special and trusted by many. Abraxas came along and was good alternative. I was swallowed by this world and the insane revenue potential, and I was hooked on the life. I moved up the chain and sold psychedelics and was respected in my spiritual work. Some friends would go to raves and flip molly. Spring break was coming up, and when it came the crew went down, and one less came back. 200 mollies were found in his car and the police/D went nuts. They followed us for months, undercover. They only cared about the molly. They respected my hustle and double life as a psychedelic guru, and I was even bold enough to sell to informants. I was never raided, but eventually I was caught slipping and arrested for MAP. I lived in a small city, and over the years, have developed quite a history. My time on the streets made me super recognized by everyone. Even cops that I'd have multiple encounters with. MAP in the States is rare, let alone getting caught with it, so everyone has a vastly different opinions. Agora respectfully left because of faulty security. Everyone else pulled an exit scam and everyone knew the gov caught up. They could track bitcoins. They shut down websites. Nothing was shareable. Except Alphabay. I tried Alphabay early and never trusted it, but as the competition went away Alphabay began to invest in itself and became the new powerhouse. I used it for a while. After years of using the post my name got hot. Customs was catching on the Netherlands and other international parcel. I began to only receive mail that was domestic. My name was hot. I had few hundred mollahs set to arrive, and they never did. Instead my father got an email from someone in the FBI and I guess they had a vague understanding in their own professions, I don't know. Basically he tasked my old man with bringing me into the station for questions regarding a matter of national security. So I went. Turns out I sold Bitcoin to a terrorist. The interview was polite, but they let me know that they saw my private Instagram. They knew my underground involvements. What they didn't know was why Muhammad sent me $500 6 months ago and what I did with it. So I showed receipt and was fine. Was told I should go into that line of work and left. Sold more drugs, did more time, and got my head out my ass. The FBI and he basically wiped out the underground market and now they fuel it. We underestimate our govt and the war on drugs. The feds own the deep web. They can track every phone call and text in the world. They can track bitcoins. Nobody is safe. Last month I bought a mystery box from the dark web just for fun. There were a few butter knives, an old DVD player in working condition, $1 and some other non-significant things. I threw everything away except the DVD player because I had some of my old CD I wanted to check. So I connected the DVD player to my TV and did my work. It was almost 11 o'clock at night. I turned off the TV in the room and went to bed. Around 2 o'clock I woke up as I was thirsty and went to the kitchen. Along the way I passed in front of the DVD player. The room was dark, and from the corner of my eye I saw a faint red light being the DVD player. I got scared as the DVD player was no longer connected to the circuit. I quickly turned on the lights, and with the help of a screwdriver opened up the DVD player. What was inside was probably the worst thing that ever happened to me. There was a miniature camera with a little battery attached to it. I quickly removed the small battery and put that camera in a dark box. My first instinct was to call police, but I waited till morning. Next day I took that camera to my friend's shop to check what type of camera was it and if it has recorded anything. I found out that the camera was not in working condition, or maybe the camera broke when the product was delivered. But the camera was designed that it records videos without any voice. Up to 24 hours videos can be recorded with it, and the small battery provides enough energy that it can provide the camera a life of about 8 hours on turn on. With this the camera was connected, that when the DVD player is connected the camera automatically starts. This was a sick joke which failed due to low quality of products. I was so relieved that the camera broke in the process. I called the police, documented the entire episode, and threw the camera. No, the dark web myth is so exaggerated. It's like Satanism in the 1980s. It's the modern boogeyman. The dark web makes me feel the opposite. I see everyone supporting VPN companies, but not Tor, even though VPN companies lie about a lot of things in their ads. Your ISP can still see the sheet you browse. Tor or something like I2P, which uses garlic routing instead of onion routing like Tor, makes your ISP completely unable to see your browsing history. And B, you also have to pay for a VPN. Tor is completely free on your end. Tor is essentially a free beta version of something like NordVPN. There's nothing to the dark web myth. It's all smoke, no fire. I use Tor as my default browser. I've downloaded a ton of shit from onion sites and not one time have I ever felt anything but safe. I'm guessing the myth of the dark web was made up in part by big internet companies trying to discredit Tor and the Tor project, the non-profit that funds Tor, for its dedication to privacy. The Tor project even welcomes people to crack Tor, so they can make it even more secure. It's similar to nuclear energy. Incidents like Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island make us think it's a force of bad, but in reality, looking past sensationalist headlines, we see nuclear energy is very efficient and very good. The same applies to the dark web. All those drug marketplaces are either FBI honeypots, and if they are actually real, they get shut down, and fast. And you'd have to go completely out of your way to even find the fake ones. During Operation Onimus, which among other things, involved the arrest of Ross Ulbricht, Andrew Luman from the Tor project, said that the claims made by law enforcement were overblown, and that the method law enforcement, used was tracing Bitcoin. Meanwhile, a Europol member said this is something we want to keep for ourselves. The way we do this, we can't share with the whole world, because we want to do it again and again and again. See a difference in statements? They want to make you feel as if using Tor is some crime. I've actually even heard people say that using Tor at all is illegal. And Hitman sites? There hasn't even been a single actual Hitman site. Every one of them has been comedically false. Same thing with red rooms, which have more or less become a running joke among the Tor/cryptography section of the world for the same reason. In fact, Ross Ulbricht was even scammed by one of these people. He was scammed by one man pretending to be 3 people, one being a vendor on Silk Road, one being the supplier of said vendor, and a gangster from Canada that would kill the supplier eventually. People also connected the dots that one infamous vendor on Silk Road was the same person, and he had used another account that also became infamous and did the same things. The man that tricked Ross Ulbricht scammed $730,000 from Ulbricht. The man was later arrested during Operation Onimus. And all the things you hear about child born? Same thing as with the drug marketplaces, FBI honeypots and fake scam sites, so please, stop spreading lies. The dark web you hear about is not real. In fact, you should pick up Tor or I2P and Freenet for yourself. It's completely free and easy to use. and it helps millions, and I even think it's sad. A bit of time after Bitcoin was released and the white paper was made, Bitcoin became associated with hackers after it started being used by WikiLeaks due to them being dropped by multiple payment systems. However, just months later, Bitcoin and other coins completely exploded in 2013. People love an anonymous currency, but an anonymous browser? That's dangerous in many people's eyes. Look past the sensationalism and see the truth. Tor will forever be stuck in the criminals and hackers stage that Bitcoin was in for about a year, which is extremely sad. The amount of misinformation the average person is spoon-fed by sensationalist media outlets about Tor is short of mind-blowing. Pick up Tor. Start caring about your privacy. Look into Tor and the facade of hackers and criminals quickly disappears. My ex-wife started using a darknet market every weekend to get party supplies. It went fine for a couple of years. Only 2 or 3 packages didn't turn up. The problems only really started when it escalated to buying coke, oxycontin and then inevitably heroin. Got a knock at the door one morning and I knew immediately it was the police, since packages had stopped arriving the past week. I knew something wasn't right as the vendor had disappeared a few days earlier. The detective didn't have a warrant, but I just took the fall for my ex, since she would have been deported otherwise as a foreign national. I said I only ordered benzodiazepines, which I showed him a legit prescription for, citing the fact it worked out cheaper for me, which was true on my part. But he said that he had info it was for coke and heroin/fentanyl as the vendor had been raided and busted, and Seems was dumb enough to write down all addresses non-encrypted. I stuck to the story saying I ordered only the benzos. Again, this was true on my part, and expressed shock that it seems they cold bean cut with fentanyl. I could tell he wasn't quite buying it, and so I took a pretty big risk and said you can even search the house right now without a warrant if you like. I haven't got anything to hide. In reality, only a meter away from him was a couple grams of coke, amphetamines, and a few grams of weed under a table. Enough for possession charges, if not with intent to supply. But thank God, after I said that and called his bluff, he immediately eased up and was satisfied. He even gave me a friendly warning not to buy my meds online anymore because it's dangerous. Then he left. It was only until later that morning that I read the local newspaper headline that 4 miners had died in a park 2 days previously after taking fentanyl-laced matabs. I put the 2 and 2 together, and it seemed pretty obviously the detective was following what he thought was a lead. The actual dealers were caught the next week. Holy shit, it was scary. Though my ex was dumb enough to continue to order months after that though, but wanted to use my credentials. I said no faking way. I quit using as I was going through a benzodiazepine taper and mental health issues anyway, and I didn't need any more anxiety or drugs in my life. So my ex started using her own and changed the drop address to her friend's house. She eventually got caught, and that time I refused to take the fall. Not only worse is that her and her friend actually tried to blame me. I said I have nothing to hide. I'll even do a blood test because I'm clean. They quickly admitted it was them. After I said that, they both got charged with possession and my ex got a large fine and a record, and so could not get permanent residency in my country. By that point I didn't care, but she begged me to go with her back to her country. No chance. She completely used me, broken my trust, and needed serious help. Needless to say, that was a death blow in our marriage, along with the opiate use, mental health issues on top, etc. And looking back, I cannot believe how stupid I was for putting myself in so much danger for her and being totally played. The thing is that we were very much in love and happily married 4 years before the darknet, and more than a few bad decisions changed that all for the worse. The whole drama was scary and traumatic as it caused so much chaos in my life. 16 years of marriage down the drain. Now I'm left with some trust issues even several years later, but at least the whole experience made me a whole lot smarter. I once ordered MAB internationally to my friend's house, and the Department of Homeland Security pulled up to their house a month after the order in a sleek black car asking about a Carlos Rodriguez, the fake name I used on the packages. No one said anything. When I was in the game I also had packages going to my drop house which were seized by customs. There was another time when I was ordering 5,300 milligrams MDMA pills which I had gotten for $2,500 USD from Amsterdam. When the package was supposed to arrive, a slip on the door showed up instead saying I needed to sign for the package. This was a surprise because the dealer had said that there wasn't supposed to be a signature for the package, and I instantly thought feds. It was so sketch. Each pill goes for $25 USD, so I was very motivated to get the pills anyway. I marked on the slip to deliver, and I rode my bike down the street to meet the delivery guy. I said I was in a rush and picked up the package from him about 8 blocks from the drop house. My adrenaline was pumping so hard. I grabbed the package, hopped on my bike, went through some alleyways, and down to the beach where I stripped the packaging, buried it in the sand, because packaging can have an alarm system with a GPS that is triggered when the package is opened, and rose away with all 5,000 pills plus some extras. The package wasn't even vacuum sealed. Edit, spelling.